Here I am. There you go, Alex. So I've said, like, I made some errors, and definitely here, like our email address, as an example, is should be named incorrectly, and now it's named properly again. So if this is an issue like that, also this would also be wrong too. So this is the problem. And if I was muted, that means chances are when I was doing my intro, then you didn't hear me, and I said just go up on LinkedIn Learning and do a little bit of work ahead of time. It might help you with what we're doing here. Okay, back to this. So now that we've got our contact class and we've done a bit of a test, that little test that we did in our app.ts was just a test. That's all this is. If I want to configure my contact so it has data from my data source, and I want to create multiple contacts, right? I want to create multiple contacts. And that means I need to do some kind of for loop, right? I want to loop through all the contacts in my contact list. And as I loop through all the contacts in my contact list, I want to create new objects. That's what I'm going to be doing at each time. And that can look like this. So let's just erase this for a second, right? And I want to do something that looks like this. I want to do a for in, right? And now there's a for in and there's a for of. So let's go back in time here for a second. What's the difference between, have you guys done the difference between a for of and a for in? So for of looks like this, for blank of blank, where the first one is the iterator and the second one is the object that we're iterating over. So example would be, I have an array and the array is called contact list. Right, here's my contact list. So, and actually it's called data source.contact list. Okay, that's the thing I'm iterating over, right? So I've got my data source contact list and I'm iterating, or because I made it into an object, let contact list be that. I could just call it contact list lowercase c in this case, like this. That's also doable because I've copied all of this and I've stored it here, okay? And then iterator doesn't make sense. Let's call this contact. So for every contact in contact list, right, I want to loop. That's what this for loop does. For every contact in contact list, loop. And what I want to do there is I want to make a new contact. So I'll call this let contact equal to a new contact, right? But I mean, I can't do this because I'll clobber what I already have, right? If I did this and I'd made a new contact, then I would change what I got from my contact list, right? So we're just going to call this new contact. So let new contact is equal to a new contact. And what I want to pass in here is all the data from my contact that I got from my contact list. So that means I could do something like in one blow, I can say contact dot, and we know that there is a first full name. We know that there is a contact number, contact dot contact number. And we know that there's a contact dot email address. We got that from the file. Yep. This? What's the name of my class? Is it contact lowercase c or uppercase c? That's what. All right. So that what this does is it loops through every contact. When you see a for loop like this, here's how you should read it. For every contact of my contact list, loop, which means keep doing. Do this again and again and again. It's going to repeat, a repeating section of code, right? All right, cool. So now I made a new contact. And once I make my new contact, let's output it to the console. Console.log. And I want to output new contacts dot toString. Again, this is another little test to make sure that everything is working as it should be, right? One step at a time. We're going slow now. I'm slowing it down. I'm pulling the brakes a little bit because I realized what you know, what you don't know. Okay. Back to this, to my page. Now I get something that looks like this. Do you see the same thing? So what did I do here? What I did was I accessed my contact file, my contacts.json, read it in to my app.ts with my little bit of jQuery that we wrote, right? And then I took that information, created new objects, and used the whatever my object is, my contact.toString, to output it here to the console. Okay. In this same way, wouldn't it be nice if we can output something directly to our local storage, right? This is okay, but it's split up, and my local storage doesn't like this kind of thing. What I want to do, I want to create a to JSON, right? A to JSON and a from JSON, right? I want to make a to JSON file, right? Or a to local storage, something like that, in my contact list. So when I can, instead of doing a contact to string, I can go contact to storage or contact to whatever. And what that's going to do for me, this new method that I'm thinking up in my head, is it's going to take my contact information and comma separate it. That's what I want to do. I want to comma separate my contact information so that it's in more of a structure. And I want it to look, when I load it in, I want it to look like JSON data. All right. So if I go back to here, and if I look here, notice my JSON data and my data in my data folder looks like this, right? But it doesn't necessarily have to look like this. I mean, if I wanted to load each data, each little bit of a contact by itself, then I want my contact, each contact, to be stored like this right here. I want to store like this inside of my local storage. I'm going to store it like this format with curly braces and everything. Okay, that's what I want to do. Why is that? Because this way, if I load it back in from local storage, it comes to me as data. It doesn't come to me as string. Okay. Let's try it out and see how this might work. So going back to my contacts, right? I have a toString, but I want to make another one called toJSON. So public toJSON. And it's going to output what? It's going to be a string, but it's going to be an object at the end, right? It's what's going to be. So for now, let's use a string. That's a JSON string, really, was what it looks like. And what I want to do when I output, I want to format it kind of like this, but I want to do it in one blow, right? And I want to say something like this. I want to say that when I output my contact, I want to return, let's do it in one line this time, backtick to create a template string. And I want to start off with curly braces, right? So in my curly braces, inside of these curly braces, that's where my contact is going to be. Let's see if this works. So here's my curly brace. And inside my curly braces, I want to make my first name, my last name, and all that stuff, my full name. So I'm going to call this full name. So I need to use, I want to use the double quotes inside of my curly braces. So let's see if this works, okay? And I want to output, because this is what you would think in the beginning, full name, and then followed by the value, which is, now this is where I do my string interpolation, and I want to interpolate in here this dot full name, right? Followed by a comma, followed by my contact number, followed by, I'm interpolating this dot contact number. And then finally, email address. And then this dot email address, sorry, curly braces, this dot email address. Okay, I'm going to break this. One thing that you can do with template strings like this is you can break them up over different lines, but be careful because it maintains the break, right? So, I mean, what I mean by that is it'll remember your breaks. So this is what it looks like. Hopefully you can do this template string right here. So that's what I'm returning. Okay, do you guys see a problem with this? Remember, this whole thing is going to be a string. I'm going to convert my data to a string and I'm going to store it inside of my local storage, this exact same way, right? Yes?
Well, it's going to have like first name, number, you know, that's all in one
It could, yeah. Here's the thing. Do I really need to know to mention this full name? Do I really care for this? Is it really important? Because I know I'm going to get a full name, first name, last name, or whatever. I really don't need all of this. In fact, I don't even need the curly brace. So here's what we really need. I'm showing you this because remember, we're just storing it in a comma separated format, like so. This is all I would need. I'm talking about this with you so that we can, I'm just puzzling it out. I'm telling you my logic so you understand my thinking. Not because I want to mess you up. Please don't think of that like that. All right, so this is really all we need, right? Okay, but what about on the way back? If I was getting stuff from JSON and I want to store it into my class, that's another way I can store my data. I can get things from JSON and I can get things that I can output to JSON, right? So again, I can make another little public method. We'll call this method from JSON. And I want to get a parameter here. I want to get JSON data. So we'll call this data. And TypeScript needs some kind of data. We're going to say that the data that's coming to us for now is a string, okay? My from JSON file is going to get the data from a string. And what I want to do with it, because I'm getting data, right, is I want to reconstruct my information from my private instance members from my data. That's what I want to do. I want to reconstruct my private instance members from my data, okay? Which might look like something like this. Now it's going to complain. It's going to complain. I'm telling you ahead of time. I want to do something like this dot full name, capital F, right, is equal to my data dot full name, right? That's what I want to be able to do. Data dot full name. And then it's going to say, I don't know what you're talking about because there's nothing like that, right? Make sense? Why? Because TypeScript says strings don't have full name properties. It doesn't know anything about a full name property in a string, right? It knows that it's going to come with some kind of data, but we don't know what it is. Here's the other thing I can do. I can make it so that my data is an object, right? So I can say my data is of type object, right? And then again, it says, I don't know what you're talking about, right? Because objects don't include full name, right? I could say my data is a contact, right? And then it does include full name, right? It does include full name, right? Data is of type contact. But the problem is that means when I put it into here, it's got to be structured in that way as a contact. And that's not going to work. So for now, we're going to say, and please don't do this often, but for now, we're just going to call it any. Remember what happens with TypeScript. If we call it any, it's like you're flipping the bird, the TypeScript saying, we don't care about you anymore, TypeScript. See you later. I'm not going to care about what, I'm going to tell you what it is. It's going to be just any. We never want to do that. If I do that with TypeScript a lot, it means that, well, why are we even using TypeScript, right? So for now, this is a stopgap measure where we're starting off and we're saying, let's just do it to make it work. Remember my motto, make it work, then refactor, okay? You're not making it right the first time. You're just going to make it work. That's most important than anything else, right? All right, so first I get my data. It works now. And I'll say this dot contact number is equal to data dot contact number. And this dot email address is equal to data dot email address. Warning, I'm not doing any validation, which means if my data is corrupt on the way in, then it's corrupt. Garbage in, garbage out. I'm not doing any validation at this point, this step so far. Maybe in the future, we'll change our members and make them better, right? But one thing at a time. All right, good. Let's do some documentation now. So we're going to do one of these, document this, and we're going to say that this method converts class data members to a comma separated list compatible with JSON. That's what it does, really, right? And this one which is from JSON. This method reads data from a comma separated list and assigns it to class data members. In this way, if you think about what we're doing, when I go to JSON and from JSON, I'm serializing and deserializing. In fact, I could have renamed these methods serialize and deserialize, and it would be perfectly valid. Okay. Couple things is param says star, doesn't know what parameter is, but it should really be some kind of string. It should be a string. Okay. Excellent. And let's put this up on GitHub. So again, I'm going to say git commit -m, and I'll say updated, or I'll say added to JSON and from JSON methods to contact class. Right. Now you should have that on GitHub if somehow you didn't get it. Awesome. So now that we did that, let's see if we can use the toString method and the from or the to JSON and the from JSON method to access the stuff in local storage. So back to my app.ts. So now, yes, we can do this. We can read data, and that reading data into the contact, right? But instead of outputting here to the console, let's not do that. And instead, let's add, as an example, to our data to local storage. And I want to start off with a counter of some kind, right? So let's make it so that we have a counter. Let count is equal to 0. And what I'm going to say here is, okay, I want to say, hey, local storage, I want to set item. And what I want to do with set item is my key is going to be my counter, right? Dot. And I want to make this toString for now. So my counter, or my count is what it's going to be, count, right? That's my string, right? It's going to convert to a string. And if I really want to be explicit, I could say something like toString. If you really want to do that, you don't have to, but let's suppose I do, right? And then what I want to do is from my value, I want to take my contact, which is my new contact, and I want to go to JSON, right? And this to JSON method should convert my output to a comma separated string, which I'm going to store in local storage. Make sense? Yes. Sure. No, I'm making it. I'm being explicit. It does it automatically for you. So semantically, I don't have to put count toString. You're correct. I could do something like this, and that's perfectly fine as well because it'll convert it to a string, right? But notice how TypeScript doesn't like this. TypeScript says, count as a number. That's why I did it. Count as a number, and it says argument of number is not assignable to parameter of type string. And that's why I put in the toString method, because TypeScript likes it. TypeScript, remember I'm saying TypeScript is more type safe. It's trying to help us to avoid problems. Let's see what my output is now. If I press save now, right? And if I go back to my browser, here's my browser. And if I go to my application, then inside of my local storage, I should have my stuff, right? Well, here's 0. And we got the first one. Here's Tony Stark and blah, 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 but not the other ones. What happened? How come? Right? It actually clobbered each one. It says 0 and 0, and I just kept overwriting the 0 over and over again, right? So what I need to do here is, yes, I do that, and then I want to do a count plus plus. Count plus plus. Are you with me? So what I've done is I've taken my data from my file and I've converted it. I've put it into a comma separated format right now, right? On my, in my local storage. So now let's do the other way around. I'm just testing these two functions out. That's all I'm doing. I want to get it from local storage and I want to print it out to the console. All right. So again, let's make another little for loop to make sure that you can trust me. So it's not the same for loop, a new one. All right. So again, I'm going to do a for of, and I'm going to do the same thing for contact of, and I want to use the contact list. Here's my contact list, right? And so I'm getting a fresh contact list. It's the contact list that I got from my original data source, right? But I don't want to do this, right? Because right now I'm getting the old data, right? I want to get the data that's from my, local storage, right? So remember in the PowerPoint? In the PowerPoint at the bottom, I talked about two things. I said, here's event handlers, and here is how you loop, right? Like right here. So I kind of want to do something like that looks like this, right? Where we have our keys equal to objects.keys, and I want to do this. So this is kind of what I want to do. I'm going to literally copy all this for a second. So here's my keys. I'm going to go back to this and paste it in. It kind of looks like this. I'll fix it so it looks nice. We need to be able to get keys from my local storage. So local storage takes the keys that I have, right, that are in my local storage. That's 0, 1, 2 right now, those three keys, right? And then I load them into a keys object, which is an array of keys. That's what it is. Now that it's an array of keys, I can loop through all the keys in my local storage. That's 0, 1, and 2. That's what I'm doing. And instead of doing a console log, I don't want to do a console log, right? I want to be able to convert from my stuff in local storage into my new contact. So again, I'll make a new contact. And this time in my new contact, I'll make it empty. And I'll use the new contact dot from JSON. And I'll pass into that my data, which is this part, right? So when I get this data right here, local storage, get key, whatever that key is. And that's the key that I'm going to get from local storage and put it out here. Okay, so that reads everything in, right? Do you see that? So again, I make keys. Keys is an array of strings. I get that because I use the built-in object.keys method from the object superclass. That's what I'm doing. Keys is part of the object superclass. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you what it is, right? It'll say that, well, keys is returns the names of the enumerable string properties and methods of an object. That's what it is. So I'm creating it. I'm saying, look at that object, local storage, and get the keys, the enumerable keys from the object, and store them as an array inside the keys variable, right? And now it's an array. And so now, because it's an array, I can use a for loop to iterate over the entire array. And key now becomes a string. So for every key in keys, I'm going to make a new contact for it. And I'm going to load that contact up with the local storage item. And that's what that is. And then let's print it out. Console log, new contact, dot toString. Okay. Will this work? What are your thoughts? So again, it's a little bit funny the way it works, okay? And it's funny because I'm reading data in from a local storage. Local storage is this big string, it's comma separated. I'm reading it in, and each of those parts, right? One part, the other part, third part. I'm getting the information from there and reading it in. It's a big string is what I'm getting, right? That's what I'm getting. A big string of data that I'm putting into, and that's what that get item is. But get item is getting every string, right? Get item is getting every string. So we're going to get something wrong out, right? Not the right thing out. So let's see how this works. So this is our flawed thinking. So back to here, right? And if I go to my console, I'm going to get a bunch of undefineds 3 times. So this is why, okay? Because, okay, so first of all, what comes back from local storage? What is this thing? Let's break it down into a thing. Let's console log that. So here's something we can do. We can do a console log, and let's look at what my local storage get item key gives you. Let's do that there. So boom, boom. What does this part do first? This part. So I make a new contact and I want to read from my local storage. How does that do? So if I do that and go back out, it looks like this. Tom, comma, comma, right? Tony Stark, comma, comma. Peter Parker, comma, comma, right? And different things. So I've got this comma, and actually it's not a string that I want to get back. It's a string array, right? It's an array. I want to separate my string somehow into an array. Then I can get that data from the array, right? When I split my string, right? And I can separate each of those things, each of those parts of the string. I can separate them into my different components. Okay. So that's different than what I did. Let's go back and fix my class, contact.ts. So I did it wrong. I got my data, and instead of doing data.fullname, this is assuming that I'm getting one whole piece of data, right? It's not the case. What if I did something like this? I want to say that data, I want to make it so that it is a string, all right? How do I, remember string manipulation? I want to split, I want to use my separator, my comma, it's a comma separated string. I want to separate the thing. So from a comma, I want to use the comma as a delimiter, and I want to say that each piece of data is one part of the string. There is a data.split function, right? Where it's a string. If we make this a string type for a second, follow me here, right? If I said that this is a split, it says split does like this. I need a separator, right? And that's what it does. It splits a string into substrings using this specified, separator, and returns them as an array. So it's a string array that I get back, right? So this is kind of our string array. Let's call that. Let's say we'll call this the string array. It's a bit of a middle step, right? And I can say that I'm going to split the data, right? Data.split, and I want to split it across a comma, right? That's like my delimiter. But remember what we got back. When I look at my data for a second, it's comma and a space, right? That's going to mess us up, right? We don't want a comma and a space. We want just a comma, which means let's just kill our application for a second and let's kill these data members. Let's just get rid of them and start over. Trust me. We're going to write it out in a better way than this. We're going to assume that we don't want spaces. We just want commas, right? Which is even better, right? So if I go back to this and go to my output, I have a space that's right here in my toJSON. And let's get rid of the spaces here so there's no spaces. So I modify my toJSON method. I'm showing you this as my thinking, my logic to troubleshoot, because this is what you're going to have to go through too, right? Okay, so here, when my output now has no spaces, just commas. Now my data.split is going to work, and my string array is going to be an array of strings. So you can actually be explicit if you want. So an array of strings be something like this, right? I could be explicit this way, or I can let it do type inference. Well, now that I have my string array, what I really want to do is not this, but rather it's going to look like string array 0, string array 1, string array 2, right? Would it not? So this is going to give you a little bit more of what we're hoping. We're hoping we're going to get this now. What do you think? Better? Now let's see what we get. Once we got this, let's see if this makes sense. And we don't have to monkey with this. Remember, I made it an any? I did it on purpose, right? I made it an any because I wanted to show you that it didn't compute. You're like, I'm going to get an object here, but really what object am I getting? I'm not getting an object. I'm actually getting a string, and I'm converting that string into an array because I'm chopping it up into pieces based on the comma. Every comma is a new substring. Okay, cool. That's what I'm getting. Okay, back to this now. Now you can see that this is back to normal. And if I go to my console, you can see I got all my data output. Let me go back to my app.ts and talk about it a little bit. I don't need my console anymore. This is gone because this is just a test for me. And this is all I need right here. And this is where you're going to get me. So this is writing to and reading from our local storage. And I'm using a contact class as an intermediary container. It's a special container that I'm going to use so that I can hold the data in my contact class and manipulate it. What I'm actually doing is serializing it when I'm storing it into my local storage, and then deserializing it or unencoding it when I'm getting it from my local storage and putting it into a data member that makes sense. I can manipulate this data now, right? Okay, that's what it works. Let's put this up on GitHub. So I'll say something like successfully performed write and read operations. It's going to be a long one with local storage. So it's going to complain for sure. Git messages shouldn't be this long, but I don't care. It's just for you to read. Git push. Okay, so why did I do this kind of thing? Why did I do this kind of thing? Well, because once I have this structure, once I can test my class and I know I can read and write from local storage, we're in business, right? I have a mechanism now that I can use to spit out data into local storage. And I have another mechanism that I can read data in from local storage. Now we can split up this crazy stuff that we did in two little functions, right? For example, this part, which writes to local storage, should only be done once, right? And we're going to call this something like, save to local storage, or we'll just call it save data. Let's make a new function like that. So function, call it save data. And in my save data function, I'm just going to do all of this. So inside here, this contact data source and all this kind of stuff, right? I want you to think about what I need. I get my data source and I'm going to pass it to my save data, right? And then it's going to do all of this stuff. Okay. So really all I need is my contact list. So here in the save data, I want to call this a data, and the contact list that I'm going to get in, right? Because it has to have a type. I can't just do this. What is the type of contact list? Contact list is of type any right now. What does the contact list become now? If I go here, contact list is still a type any. What about the contact list here? Type any, type any. So it doesn't know what the contact list is. I'm just getting data from my contact list, which is really, we can be very explicit. We can say that this data is an array of contacts, right? That's what it is. It's an array of contacts, but it's not true. Because although it looks like an array of contacts, that's what this looks like. This looks like an array of contacts. It is not. These are objects that have three properties: full name, contact number, and email address. They are not contacts. They are JSON objects. That's what they are. Although they may look like it, they're not. And if I was to take them in, that would be a problem. So we have a bit of a dilemma. Going back to this, if I made the contact list an object, if I said this is an object type, then again, I'm going to start getting some issues. It's going to say contact list object. I don't understand what you want to do. So that can't work like this. So contact list can't be an object. It's going to be an array, right, of type data, array of data of some kind, right? So it's going to be an array type. So it could say something like, well, contact list is an array. Array of what, you're going to say? Array of type any, right? That is possible because now we can see that this works. It's an array of type any. That's what it is. And if I go contact at full name, you're going to go, well, full name does not exist on type never. Okay. Array of type any. Now it works. On any array. We don't know what array it's going to be, but it's an any array. It means that it could be an array of something, right? We don't know what it is, right? So that's definitely something we want. And because contact list is an array of some kind of array is what we're getting in, That's the type what we want to receive here. Data is some kind of array of type any. Okay, for now. Good. So that's my saved data. Now, because I've done this, I can pass in all of this information, right? All this stuff here, right? And by the way, going back to what I think what you said, Tyler, you said, do we really need to put this contact list out here anymore? And the answer is, well, we don't, right? Because we're never using it down here. It's only ever living and dying in here anyway. So we might as well not declare it here at all. In fact, we can declare it here like this, right? But then if we do it like this, we can probably do it in one line. So we can probably do something like this, which is, well, like this. Okay. And if we're going to do it like this, I want to take this contact list of type any that we got from our data source and pass it to our save data method, right? So here it would look something like this now as I'm extracting. Save data. I'm going to pass in my contact list, right? And what do I want to do with my contact list when I save my data? I want to do all of this. So I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to put that over here. And this is going to be changed from contact list to data. Now we know it's saving our contact list. So there's two ways we can do this. We can change the name here from data to contact list, which would be the easiest change. Now this is a very specific saving data, right? Which means our saved data is really saving our contact list. So again, I'm just going to rename symbol. So it's going to be called save contact list data. Right? By the way, I'm going up through all these little iterations with you so you understand my logic. Again, logical thinking. I'm trying to think, okay, well, I need this, well, then I need that. Well, I need to change this, then I need to rename that. I need to rename this, well, I need to change this. And I'm doing this over and over again so you see how things are morphing. We're iterating until we come up with the right thing. Just like an artist, if you're an artist, you know, when you make a painting, like I told you before, right? We start off and you iterate and you iterate and you iterate, and all my artist friends and CSS people, right? You know what they say? It's never good enough until it is. That's what we're doing. It's not good enough until it is. We're going to keep iterating and keep baking our pie or whatever we're going to do and working with the recipe until it's perfect. All right, good. There's our save data, save contact data, list data function. I'm going to click save there. Without any changes, I'm going to see if it still does the same stuff. Okay, let's see this if it works. Without any changes, let's see if it works. Well, okay. I'm just going to go back to local storage, right? And you can see still we're good. No changes. It's still working the exact same way it should have. Right? If there were problems, this would have an error. If we don't have an error, we're good. Next. Let's do the next one. So the next little function is going to be, I want to be able to load my data. I want to load my contact list. Let's do that one. So I want to say, okay, fine. Right? I'll make a new function. And by the way, this other function here returns void. Right? So my new function is going to be called load contact list data, right? And I load my contact list data from my local storage. Okay, so now all I need is this. But at the end, what do I want to return? I want to return an array of contacts. I didn't do that in the previous time, but now I'm going to return an array of contacts. Once I have that array, guys, guess what I can do? I can start manipulating it. It's for me to manipulate once I have that array, right? So let's do that. So I want to return a string array, right? Or an array of contacts, a contact array. All right, cool. That's what I'm returning, okay? So if I'm returning a contact array, cool, right? Now I did it here, right? And I did it here because inside of my getJSON method, we know that we have already got our data. This data has some stuff in it, right? As an example. And so here, what I'm going to do is I want to take this part, but I want to do something like this. I want to say, okay, I want to load my contact list data, right? I want to load my contact list data, and I'm going to save it inside of an array. We'll call this the contact array. Contact array, right, is going to be equal to this. And this will be a contact array. Okay, I don't have this functionality yet, but we're going to get there. I'm going to grab all this, copy it, and I'm going to put this up in here. So what this does is it iterates through everything, right? And instead of me making a new contact every single time, I'm going to return a contact array, which means let's make one first. So here we can make a new contact array. We'll call it contact array. And that's going to be equal to a new array of type contacts. So it's an empty array of contacts, which is something that looks like this, right? Or you can use something that looks like this. You can say it's a new array of type contact, right? So a new contact array. If I can just get the syntax correctly without it blocking me with all this other stuff. Okay, new syntax. Look at this. Okay, new syntax, right? So I can make an array with square brackets. Remember, I can declare an array of square brackets, or I can make it something that looks like this. And what this does is it makes it a contact array. New array of type contact is like I'm making an empty container. So let's go through the steps. So creates an empty contact array container. Right, that's what I first did. So that's step one. Next, iterate through, and instead of doing this with new contacts, I don't want to do that. What I want to say now is something like, hey, let's get that contact array. And what I want to do is I want to do a push, right? I want to push the new contact onto that array. So I want to make a new contact onto that array. But instead of doing an anonymous contact like that, right? That doesn't make any sense. I could make a brand new contact first, like I did earlier. I could say, let's, new contact equals to a new contact. I could do that and then push my new contact to the array, whatever that is. So I can push it to the array, new contact. I could do that here, but maybe what I want to do is instead of pushing it then, I want to push it at the end, which is down here. So make it, and before I go somewhere else, push it to the new contact array up here. Okay. Now here I'm outputting it, but I'm not going to output it right here, just to give you a sense of how this works, right? Because this function doesn't need to necessarily output anything, right? And then once I've loaded up my contact array with a set of contacts, then I can return it. Okay, those are my two functions. So push, remember, is an array method. And what push does is it adds the array it adds a new contact to the end of the array. That's what we're hoping, right? But actually, for JavaScript, are we timing out again? God damn it, we are timing out again. I told you, right? I have 4 hours of work and I have 3 hours of time with you, right? So when we push something to the end of the array in C++, it would actually push it right to the end. So the array would have another part at the bottom. When you do push with JavaScript, it pushes it wherever it wants. Just to let you know. You don't know, you can't guarantee if it's going to be at the top of the array or the bottom of the array. You have no idea where it's going to go. Okay. Let's make some quick documentation for this. So we're going to say document this. And we're going to say that, okay, so this takes an array of type any. We'll say this method saves our data to local storage. Okay. And this one is this method reads our data from local storage and returns a contact array. That's what it does, okay? To use this and to test it, I'm going to go here. So now that I've got my contact array, now we can iterate from it here. I can do a for of loop again. And this time I'm going to iterate with the contact array, which is the better way of doing it. So for every contact in contact, we're going to do console log context.toString. And my friends, this is your ICE3. Unfortunately, it's all as far as I can go. Let's test it and make sure it all does what it's supposed to do before I put it up on GitHub for you. And then we'll be done for the day. And I know you're going to have questions, but we're going to be kicked out of here in a second. There it is. Right. So it did all that work for us. You just can't see the process because we're not getting an error. Right. But actually, if I'm still getting this, and because I modified everything, we're getting everything as it should. Okay. Let's put this up on GitHub. And while I'm doing that, questions. I see if I can answer them before they raid the place. Questions. Yes. You can download the transcripts. Yeah, so the transcripts being like what I'm saying, you mean? Yeah, it's on YouTube. So YouTube has automatic CC, closed captioning. I don't know if you can download the entire transcript from scratch, but you can watch the YouTube and it'll tell you what it's saying. That's the best I can do right now. Yeah, WebEx doesn't. This doesn't do that unless I turn it on, and it doesn't do it automatically. I'll try. I'll try. Okay. Sure. I'll see what I can do for you, honestly. Yeah. Any other questions before we go for the day, guys? So for your in-class exercise 3, if you do what I did and you're able to output to a console, you're good to go for ICE 3. Okay. Yes.
Can I just look at the
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop recording here.